the stage, please. Thank you. Here we're going to compare the centralized exchanges, or CEX, and decentralized exchanges, or DEX. We will compare and contrast centralized exchanges by exploring the benefits, challenges, and future prospects of both models, pros and cons, so to say. Ladies and gents, please welcome on this stage the moderator of this panel. From Mercurio, Mr. James Moreale. James, take your seat on the right-hand side of the stage. Thank you. Would also like to welcome David Loewenstein, the Business Development Manager from BitGet. Roy van Krimpen, the Regional Lead from Binance. Please take your seat. Pierre Lavareg, Business Development from Trust Wallet. I hope you pronounced your surname correctly. And Danish Casey, Head of Business Strategy and Operations from XGO. Have I missed someone? Oh, we still have Artur Fürstov from Mercurio. Artur, join us here. Artur is the Head of Sales at our organizers today. So can we start with James, please?
Thanks very much for the introduction. Hey everyone, welcome to the final panel of the day. Just quick on behalf of Mercurio, I really do appreciate all your attention and your attendance today, so thanks very much for that. We're going to discuss briefly and dive into centralized exchanges versus decentralized exchanges. So just a quick introduction for me. I'm James Moriani, I'm a Customer Success Manager here at Mercurio. So generally, centralized exchanges are the main entry point for most of the users into the crypto world. Typically, they have a good UI, they offer liquidity, they offer leverage, and they've played a huge part into mass adoption. In contrast, decentralized exchanges have emerged. These leverage blockchain technologies and smart contracts. They aim for true decentralization, removing the need for any third parties. So I have a panel here of experts, and these guys will provide some insights into the viewpoints onto this subject today. So I think we're a bit pushed for time, so we'll just jump straight into it. So I'll start and hand over to Roy. If I can ask your view on what are the key differences between centralization and decentralization, and how do these differences look from a user endpoint?
Thanks a lot. On that as well. We just think that in terms of innovation, we often see that more centralized entities are able to move slightly quicker than decentralized entities. That's one. And then two, we are now in a stage, first you start with the innovation. After big innovation, there will always be regulation, especially in the financial service providing industry. So now we are in the phase of creation of regulation. Biggest regulation is still yet to come, for Europe at least, under MiCA in about 18 months. And we do suspect and we do see already that centralized entities have a better chance of becoming regulated. Therefore, they can be a better bridge, at least in the short term, between traditional finance and the crypto industry.
Perfect, thanks. Right. Arthur, I wonder if I could ask you to follow up on some of the main challenges for decentralized exchanges?
Oh, yeah, I think the main challenge is probably, like just the difference between regulated and unregulated entities. So centralized exchanges probably have more, like established business model. They can plug in directly to bank transfers, bank acquiring, and all these channels might be available as well on decentralized projects. But this is something we're lacking right now. This is what we're trying to build out in Mercurio, and so solve those challenges for the users.
Excellent. So Pierre as well, also, maybe you can let me know the challenges that are faced on your point of view from Trust Wallet with user experience, speed, transaction costs, those kind of things. How do non-custodial wallets address these issues, making it more accessible for users?
From a user perspective, we can see DeFi and decentralized world as the next iteration of Web3 for users. Basically, we can consider decentralization as the first iteration, where they bring more transparency and privacy for users compared to the traditional finance. DeFi bring a more open and a more fair and a more transparent way to trade. with a more open and fair ecosystem for trading for users. So currently the main objective is to fill the gap for decentralized services with centralized exchange in terms of user experience, how we can make DeFi and Web3 services more accessible with the less friction possible for every user, basically.
So, I mean, following up on so decentralized exchanges in terms of liquidity and trading volume, generally centralized exchanges were historically dominating the market for that. I suppose I could follow up with David and see how you think the current landscape evolves with the interest.
Hello. I work for Liquid, so we are a centralized exchange as Binance, so I'm a bit biased on the answer. But mainly, centralized exchanges do have some advantages because we do have more liquidity, and that's a plus for institutions because when they place their large trades, it doesn't impact that much the market price, and they don't have slippage. So it's easier for them to price large trades, and also since there's a lot of regulatory issues with DeFi and everything's anonymous. The fact that with a centralized exchange you are operating with KYC and ML usually it's helpful for institutions because they are required to have KYC and ML for their clients, and that's I think the main factors for institutions, and that actually bring the volume exchange because most of the volume derives from institution or large companies.
Understood. So following on with liquidity as well, Dinesh, maybe from your experience, how does the liquidity differ between a centralized exchange and a decentralized exchange?
Sure. So the liquidity for centralized exchange is of course far more deeper, and there's two reasons for that, right? So the first is the token pair availability that you can have on a centralized exchange is much higher than a decentralized exchange. So as a result, you can tap into liquidity from other token pairs, so that is much more in depth than say DEXs. And then secondly, you can access multiple market makers and liquidity aggregators at the same time, right? So you can incentivize them to kind of do high volume trades with rebates and such. You can incentivize via low fees, etc. So many market makers are actually more keen on trading on say Binance or BitCap as opposed to other DEXs where there's no high incentive other than just token incentives, which kind of dry up really quickly and they move on, right? So that's where the superiority of CEXs, CEXs, not CEXs, exists. DEXs are good, don't get me wrong, I think we definitely need DEXs as well. The problem with DEXs is that there was a gentleman this morning that raised a point where how do we get retail users to access or be part of the liquidity pools. I think that is still quite risky, right? Because if you take part as a retail user in liquidity pools, especially on DEXs, you're kind of exposed to impermanent risks, impermanent loss, right? So if you don't understand how automated market makers work, you will struggle to manage those risks, and you lose money in downtime where if there's an asset price mismatch and such. So yeah, those are my comments.
So with that being said as well, especially for decentralized exchanges, how do you think, what's the process look like for user acquisition and onboarding from a DEX compared to a centralized exchange?
Sure. I think, given where we're heading with regulation, CEX definitely has an upper hand. And this is for one big reason, which is as a CEX, you can register your company, right? So and you can get crypto registration licenses like VASP, etc. So you can actually do traditional marketing like how you would do to acquire customers for your startup, for example. You can go the traditional marketing route. With DEXs, you're not allowed to do that. Google or Twitter, etc. They would want to know, where you're registered, who you are, etc. They need to ensure that you have licenses in place, so you can't really market, right? So CEX definitely has a more, a simple path. So referrals, marketing, all those channels that they can tap into. However, I think at the same time, DEXs do have a bit of an advantage as well, right? Because I feel that given the new Web3 mechanisms like token airdrop or incentives, if you participate in the community, NFT whitelist, etc., these things kind of help you scale acquisition in a more vibe-esque manner, right? So there's a community-driven acquisition, so it's quite fun. My experience is that once, I guess, incentives dry up, users kind of move on from DEXs. So usually I feel like the CEX have an upper hand with stickiness, and they can use a lot of the traditional, I guess, in-app notification, etc., to keep on getting you hooked, whereas DEXs, they struggle once the incentives run out. There's no reason for you to be in that DEX. You move on to another that pops up. So those are, I guess, the overarching view on like how DEX and CS acquire, as well as I guess scale their businesses.
Amazing. I just wanted to go back to Roy's opening point, in the fact that he's representing one of the largest exchanges in the world. So can you provide any overviews of how Binance bridge the gap between centralized and decentralized, how these efforts contribute to a more seamless user experience?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and maybe first of all, it's also important to understand that we pose it as a question as if it's black and white, centralized versus decentralized. But that's absolutely not the case. To me, centralization and decentralization is more or less a scale. You have different factors contributing to how decentralized something is. You can look, for example, into the blockchains. Most of the blockchains, if not all, will claim a certain amount of decentralization. But a more critical person, especially a Bitcoin maxi, would claim, even with Ethereum, look, the validators are way smaller than with us, right? So is the number of validators the number of decentralization? Or if you even look at Bitcoin itself, 1% of the Bitcoin owners hold a big chunk of the Bitcoin supply. That's also a form of centralization. It just doesn't have attached the voting attached to it. So it's always a scale. It's important to remember that. Look at decentralization and think, what is the decentralized part in this? Apart from that, decentralization, spreading the voting power is very important, and as mentioned, we are quite bullish on that. So how we contribute, I think one of the most obvious ways is listing tokens associated with decentralization. So we also provide them the liquidity and stable price in the order books. Apart from that, we have a thing called Binance Labs. Binance Labs is our VC/incubator arm. Over 2022, we've invested about $500 million into the Web3 world, and this is mainly the so-called DeFi side of things. So I think we have a prime example right next to us with Trust Wallet as one of the partners on that end as well.
As you referenced, but yeah, I'll jump to Pierre and ask, what is the landscape look like for DeFi on Trust Wallet in the future?
Yeah, as Roy said, it also depends on the profile of the user. Some user has a very strong perception about self-ownership of the token, of the coin. So DeFi and self-custody wallet answer to this user, but from a user perspective, it's bring more constraints than having an account on an exchange where everything is more simple in general. So now the next phase of innovation for DeFi and self-custody will be how to make wallets much more mass adoption ready, and how we can make wallets much more user-friendly for Web2 users and not just for a tech-savvy Web3 person. So this can come from the MPC innovation, from the accurate abstraction, who should bring the authority notification from an infrastructure layer to a designer layer, and to have a much better user experience designed for every product and every use case. So to answer the question, I think this will come from the next way we are going to design the wallet for the user based on the current innovation.
Excellent. Just been let know that we have 5 minutes and we'll do some Q&A, so if you guys in the audience, if you have some questions, start thinking of them now. I'll just wrap up with one question left from me. It's kind of an open question to all of you guys, I think, all can raise it if they want to answer. So, I mean, do you believe that decentralized exchanges will eventually surpass a centralized exchange, or will we ever see one completely overpower the other, or will they live in harmony? Different opinions would be great. More than one guy can answer.
So my view is slightly different. I think they will be blurred. So what I mean by that is, with all the crypto travel rule coming into play at the end of this year, right, with MiCA rules coming in, if your platform touches fiat, you cannot get away without not doing KYC or any of these things that the regulators are asking, right? The only difference you might have is your trade might be done on-chain, but still that is not scalable today, right? That's why you have DYDX moving to Cosmos ecosystem to run their own validators and such, right? But today you cannot do on-chain, or order book. Like you cannot run an order book on-chain. That's why DYDX does all their order book and matching engine offline, right? So my view is with all these regulations coming in, what's going to happen, at least in the EU, might be different in the US. What's going to happen is, I think, with the, with MiCA and crypto travel rule coming, it will be a regulation-driven innovation. That's going to fundamentally kind of reshape some of the business models, also kind of rejig some of the market structures, right? So we're going to see companies like Binance either winning the game wildly even more, or losing the game. Who knows, right? But it's all about regulation, and the lines will be very much blurred, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would agree with Danish and Roy, like about, in general, centralized exchanges have more products, more sophisticated product offering, and people just love it because of its very easy and accessible UX. But I would agree with the peer as well, like the next generation of DeFi wallets, DeFi applications might have pretty much the same features that's already centralized exchange established. And I think this is probably just, matter of some timing by the end of this year, as well as new regulation coming. We will see probably new standards for DeFi protocols as well, and they will be more open for kind of fintech innovations, fintech-driven products to give more kind of pretty much the same that user can have with centralized exchange, but there is still a group of customers that will prefer smart contract like non-custody wallets, and as well as using all of these features like. For instance, we trying to deliver right now features like banking as a service and credit card linked to your crypto balance. So it should be kind of a new painkiller for non-custody wallets users that can also have this access and use it in like a normal way that they have been using in centralized exchanges. So and then also I think there is also like one of the main points. It's governance and the way that products designed and driven in centralized exchanges and the way they're driven in decentralized exchanges is pretty different because of in the beginning centralized exchanges they're led by group of founders like stakeholders that's all over the way controlling this journey and making sure that everything going with their opinions. But I think what's the power of decentralized application is that everything is permissionless and companies, businesses can abandon the protocols, but they still have some users and talented developers that can be working on top of their protocol, like Uniswap, P2, and all of that. So that's my take.
Yeah, in my opinion, both SEX and DEX eventually will blend in one kind of entity, because there are, at the end of the day, there are solutions to the same problem, which is fostering the crypto market and allowing all the new users to get in. At the end of the day, SEX are maybe better for institutions just because there's like a person on the other side that can answer a call, and DEXs are better for people that don't want their data to be known. So I think at the end of the day, SEXs will move towards DEXs, and DEXs will move like a bit forward, like SEXs, like having a hybrid of the two, because it doesn't make sense to fight on each other. I think the market needs to work together and find the best solution for everyone. So that's my view on it.
If I maybe can add to that as well. I might be even slightly more optimistic towards the DEXs. So I definitely agree. In the short term, DEXs cannot be regulated under MiCA that's coming in about 18 months. However, they are looking into ways to regulate DeFi as well. They probably try to add DEXs there as well. And then, as said before, decentralization is a certain scale. Who says that there won't be a certain hybrid solution more between indeed the centralized entity as well as a decentralized one, where you aggregate services from, let's say, KYC vendors and so on that you can rely on potentially, right? So I think there are some clear advantages into decentralized entities. It's just that the innovation and the regulation needs more time to catch up on both ends. But I think that it has a high potential if these catch up over time.
Yeah, just my opinion about it. I think we are just at the beginning of the journey for both DeFi and centralized finance and centralized exchange. Basically, I think both volume will continue to grow over the next coming years. But yeah, at the end, as Roy said, and the other, the regulation will have the biggest impact on which volume will become the biggest. On the short term, DeFi has an advantage. It's not scoped by regulators, so this gave the ecosystem a better flexibility to innovate and to create a product. But on the long run, everything will be regulated if we want to make it accessible for institutional. So yeah, let's see how the regulation will catch up with DeFi and CeFi in the future.
Thanks, Pierre. Thanks, guys. It was great to hear five different viewpoints on that question. It's great. So we have come to the end, and we overran a little bit. So thank you all, everybody in the audience, for paying attention and engaging, and thanks everybody on the panel for contributing. And yeah, that's the end of the day. So we'll pass it over now and continue.
Oh, that was a wonderful, wonderful discussion. CX versus DEX. We'd like to express our biggest thanks to James Morreale, Arthur Fistoff, David Loewenstein, Roy van Krimpen, Pierre Lavarag, and Danish KC. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for your